Ever heard that Napoleon was short? Or that Vikings wore horned helmets? Or that Columbus discovered America? Well, what if I told you all of that is wrong? Today we're diving deep into some of history's greatest lies that somehow, over time, became accepted as fact. Get ready to have your mind blown. Let's start with one of the most famous facts in history. Napoleon Bonaparte, the tiny tyrant. We've all seen the cartoons and heard the jokes, but the truth is, Napoleon wasn't short at all, especially for his time. He was about 5 feet 7 inches tall, which was actually average, or even slightly above average, for a Frenchman in the early 19th century. So, where did this short man myth come from? Two main sources: British propaganda and a simple measurement mix-up. The British, his greatest enemies, loved to caricature him as a comically small and angry man to diminish his powerful image. On top of that, the French inch was slightly longer than the British inch. So when his height was recorded in French feet and inches, and then read by the British, he sounded shorter than he actually was. It was the perfect storm of propaganda and a conversion error that created a lie so powerful, it has lasted for over 200 years. Next up, let's talk Vikings. Close your eyes and picture a Viking. What do you see? A big, burly warrior with a braided beard, and, of course, a helmet with horns sticking out, right? It's an iconic image, but it's completely fabricated. There is absolutely zero archaeological evidence or contemporary accounts suggesting that Vikings ever wore horned helmets into battle. Can you imagine how impractical that would be? It's an easy way to get your helmet snagged or knocked off in a fight. This famous look was actually popularized in the 19th century, specifically for an opera by Richard Wagner, Der Ring des Nibelungen. The costume designer thought it looked dramatic and fearsome on stage, and the image just stuck. Real Viking helmets were much more practical, typically simple dome-shaped bowls made of iron or leather, sometimes with a nose guard. So the next time you see a Viking with a horned helmet, you can confidently say, "That's from an opera, not history." Let's move on to the American discovery. We all learned in school that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and discovered America. This is a massive oversimplification that borders on being a complete lie. First and foremost, you can't discover a place that is already inhabited by millions of people. The Americas were home to thriving, complex civilizations for thousands of years before Columbus ever set foot on a ship. Secondly, he wasn't even the first European to arrive. Norse explorer Leif Erikson landed in what is now Canada around the year 1000, nearly 500 years before Columbus. So, what did Columbus actually do? He initiated lasting, widespread contact between the eastern and western hemispheres, which did change the world forever, but not always for the better. Calling him the discoverer of America erases the entire history of the indigenous peoples and overlooks the Europeans who beat him to it by half a millennium. Here's a quick one that might surprise you. Remember the story of Isaac Newton getting hit on the head by an apple, leading to his theory of gravity? It's a great story. Simple, elegant, memorable, but it probably never happened. At least, not like that. Newton himself never claimed an apple fell on his head. The story comes from one of his biographers, who wrote that Newton was inspired when he saw an apple fall from a tree in his garden. He simply wondered why the apple fell straight down rather than sideways or upwards. It was the observation of the fall, not a concussion from it, that sparked his genius insight into the universal force of gravitation. The bonk on the head part was likely added later to make the story more entertaining and easier for people to remember. It's a classic case of a small, factual event being embellished into a much more dramatic legend. Let's head to ancient Rome. Et tu, Brute? And you, Brutus? These are supposedly the famous last words of Julius Caesar as he was assassinated by a group of senators, including his friend Brutus. It's a line made immortal by Shakespeare, dripping with betrayal and drama. The only problem is, there's no reliable historical source that says he actually said it. The Roman historian Suetonius, writing over a century later, reported 2 different versions. One was that Caesar said nothing at all, just pulling his toga over his head as he fell. The other was a rumor that he spoke a phrase in Greek, not Latin, which translates to "You too, my child?" Et tu, Brute was pure Shakespearean invention, created for dramatic effect on stage. It's a powerful line for sure, but it's theater, not a direct historical quote. What about witches in America? You've probably heard of the Salem witch trials, and you might picture dozens of women being burned at the stake. This is another powerful image that has been distorted by time and pop culture. While the Salem witch trials were a horrific and real event, where 20 people were executed for witchcraft, none of them were burned at the stake. In colonial America, the legal method of execution for witchcraft was hanging. 19 of the victims were hanged, and one elderly man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. Burning at the stake was a method more commonly used in witch hunts in Europe, but the two have become conflated in the popular imagination, creating a historically inaccurate picture of what happened in Salem. Let's debunk a fact about our own minds. You've likely heard the claim that we only use 10% of our brain. It's a popular idea in movies and self-help books, suggesting we all have this vast, untapped potential just waiting to be unlocked. It sounds inspiring, but neurologists will tell you it's complete nonsense. Brain scans show that we use virtually all of our brain all the time, even when we're sleeping. Different tasks might activate different regions more intensely, but there are no dormant, unused 90% sections. Every part of the brain has a known function. This myth's origins are a bit murky, but it seems to have been perpetuated by people misinterpreting or misquoting early psychological research from over a century ago. The truth is, you're already using your whole brain. The challenge isn't to unlock more of it, but to learn how to use it more effectively. And finally, let's talk about art. Van Gogh, the tortured artist who, in a fit of madness, cut off his entire ear and gave it to a woman. This story is a cornerstone of his legend as a brilliant but unstable genius. However, the reality is a bit different and less dramatic. Most modern historians believe Van Gogh only cut off a part of his earlobe, not the whole ear. The incident happened after a heated argument with his friend, the artist Paul Gauguin. And while the exact details are debated, the cutting off the whole-eared version is likely an exaggeration that grew over time to fit the romanticized narrative of the mad artist. It makes for a better story, but it's not the full truth. So there you have it. From Napoleon's height to Viking helmets and Caesar's last words, history is filled with facts that are actually fictions. These stories stick around because they're simple, dramatic, and easy to remember. But the truth is often more complex and, I think, even more interesting. What other historical lies have you heard? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed debunking these myths with me, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next video.